air out, air out. Example, can I open the window, air out the room? Can I open the window, air out the room? We will air out the house. We will air out the house. Bring in, bring in. Example, could you take the baby? I need to bring in the washing. Could you take the baby? I need to bring in the washing. Would you bring it in at once? Would you bring it in at once? Chop, chop. Example, chop the carrots up into small pieces. Chop the carrots up into small pieces. Chop the meat into cubes before frying it. Chop the meat into cubes before frying it. Clean, clean. Example, let's clean up the mess. Let's clean up the mess. Make sure you clean behind the stove. Make sure you clean behind the stove. Cool down, cool down. Example, he waited for the soup to cool down a bit. He waited for the soup to cool down a bit. Let the cookies cool down before you try them. Let the cookies cool down before you try them. Crush, crush. Example, use a pestle and mortar to crush the spices. Use a pestle and mortar to crush the spices. Joe crushed his cigarette into an ashtray. Joe crushed his cigarette into an ashtray. Cut, cut. Example, cut the vegetables into thin strips. Cut the vegetables into thin strips. Do not cut down the tree that gives you shade. Do not cut down the tree that gives you shade. Dip, dip. Example, he dipped his hand in the water. He dipped his hand in the water. Dip the strawberries into melted chocolate. Dip the strawberries into melted chocolate. Drain, drain. Example, you have to drain out all the water first. You have to drain out all the water first. Can you drain the spaghetti, please? Can you drain the spaghetti, please? Dry, dry. Example, Mary dried her hands. Mary dried her hands. He was drying his hair with a towel. He was drying his hair with a towel. Dust off, dust off. Example, please dust off the window and sill. Please dust off the window and sill. It's time to dust off the old chemistry books and start studying. It's time to dust off the old chemistry books and start studying. Fold, fold. Example, will you help me fold up the clothes? Will you help me fold up the clothes? Fold up your clothes. Don't just throw them on the floor. Fold up your clothes. Don't just throw them on the floor. Grate, grate. Example, grate the cheese and sprinkle it over the tomatoes. Grate the cheese and sprinkle it over the tomatoes. Peel and grate the potatoes. Peel and grate the potatoes. Grind, grind. Example, could you grind up some coffee for me? Could you grind up some coffee for me? Grind some black pepper over the salad. Grind some black pepper over the salad. Hang up, hang up. Example, why don't you hang up your clothes? Why don't you hang up your clothes? How many times have I told you to hang up your clothes? How many times have I told you to hang up your clothes? Mix. Mix. Example. Mix the flour and water together. Mix the flour and water together. Mix the sour cream with ketchup. Mix the sour cream with ketchup. Mop. Mop. Example. Don has to mop the floor of the cafe every night. Don has to mop up the floor of the cafe every night. I just mopped the kitchen floor. I just mopped the kitchen floor. Peel. Peel. Example. Please peel an apple for me. Please peel an apple for me. Could you peel an orange for me? Could you peel an orange for me? Pick up. Pick up. Example. Can you pick up the pen for me? Can you pick up the pen for me? The phone rang and I picked it up. The phone rang and I picked it up. Pour. Pour. Example. Shall I pour you some more coffee? Shall I pour you some coffee? She poured some milk into a glass. She poured some milk into a glass. Pull. Pull. Example. Can you pull the rope tight? Can you pull the rope tight? He pulled his wallet out of his pocket. He pulled his wallet out of his pocket. Push. Push. Example. Don't push me. Don't push me. I slowly pushed the door open. I slowly pushed the door open. Run out of. Run out of. Example. We ran out of gas on the freeway last night. We ran out of gas on the freeway last night. We ran out of milk. Could you stop at the store on your way home? We've run out of milk. Could you stop at the store on your way home? Sift. Sift. Example. Sift the flour and baking powder into a mixing bowl. Sift the flour and baking powder into a mixing bowl. Sift the flour finally before adding it to the mixture. Sift the flour finally before adding it to the mixture. Sip. Sip. Example. She was sitting at the table sipping her coffee. She was sitting at the table sipping her coffee. She sipped at her wine with pleasure. She sipped at her wine with pleasure. Slice. Slice. Example. Slice up the onions and add them to the meat. Slice up the onions and add them to the meat. Slice the tomatoes about 1/4 inch thick. Slice the tomatoes about 1/4 inch thick. Sprinkle. Sprinkle. Example. Sprinkle the top with the cheese. Sprinkle the top with the cheese. Sprinkle chocolate on top of the cake. Sprinkle chocolate on top of the cake. Squeeze. Squeeze. Example. Squeeze the lemons and pour the juice into a jug. Squeeze the lemons and pour the juice into a jug. Alice squeezed the wet sponge. Alice squeezed the wet sponge. Sweep. Sweep. Example. Will you sweep the floor? Will you sweep the floor? I have just finished sweeping the kitchen floor. I have just finished sweeping the kitchen floor.